Wrestling towards the line, Jack O'Neill! And O'Neill's gone for the field goal! Bat it back, O'Neill! Challenge to cut out pass to O'Neill! O'Neill goes in!
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Be The Player podcast. My name is Jack O'Neill. This podcast is for the player, by the player, and joining me today is Manly Sea Eagles captain. He's been playing a lot of lock forward this season. He's more of a traditional front rower, but he's really made a good transition there. He, of course, played in the forwards for New South Wales. Matty Harris, how you going, my friend?
I'm good, yourself? Glad to be here.
Yeah, man, not too bad. I'm a bit crook at the moment, so hopefully you can take off a bit of the pressure and do a bit of talking for me. But anyway, on today's podcast, we're going to go through the State of Origin Game 3 review. Of course, it was an unhappy night for us being New South Welshmen, but a great performance by Queensland. We're going to go through some of the big talking points around the league and the agenda. Before we're going to go through the round, we're going to give you guys our predictions and who we think will be the MVP for each of those games, and then I will go through all your questions that you guys submitted to me in the Q&A. We've got about 22 responses, I think, so thank you very much to everyone who got involved. So without further ado, let's get into our Game 2 review. Yes, the filthy Queenslanders did get a win above New South Wales. The score was 12 New South Wales, 18 Queensland over in Accor Stadium. New South Wales scored 2 tries by the Canberra Raiders, duo Rahal Kaval and Jacob Morrison. I kicked 2 out of 3 goals, and over in the Queenslanders, it was 3 tries, 18, of course, Joey Kelly, Jake Tuss, and Liam Ryan were the try scorers. Isaac Edwards, perfect off the boot. I'm going to start off with you, Matty. I want to hear your honest thoughts on this game.
Honestly, started off pretty poor from us. Queensland had a great start. Got up to a quick 12-0 lead. We held on for a bit. Bit of a strange decision with the penalty goal while 12-0 down, I must say. It almost came in clutch for us. It did to the point where we were 12-all after missing a kick as well. But then just near the end, that heartbreaking runaway try.
Yeah, I think Joey Kelly's performance in that whole series was just first class. He's just, this season, to be honest, he hasn't really been able to be shut down by any opposition. He's probably one of the best wingers, in fact, he probably is the best winger in the game at the moment, which wouldn't sit well with you and Kane. Obviously, you hold yourselves up to a pretty high standard, but, you know, it was just I think we just started too slow. If we had to start a bit faster, there's a solid chance we win that game, but we'll rue our missed chances like I put in the notes there. Like, we had a lot of chances to win the entire series. Game 1, it was a similar story. We just started off too slow and couldn't claw it back in the end, and, you know, Queensland, it was just a typical Origin series, unfortunately. I want to talk about the Queensland changes a little bit. They made some big changes, and I remember I was critical of them, but I backed Luke Malkus as well, and it really did prove to be rewarding. Of course, he dropped Samuel Atchison back to the bench, started Bo Sadler at hooker, Casey Namana got his first Origin start, Malkus moved to the second row, Jackson Allison to lock. There were a lot of changes. What did you make of them?
So, for starters with Sadler, when I seen Sadler go to hooker, I was like, oh boy. Being his captain in the regular season, I know how good he is at hooker, and I was surprised he didn't get the starting hooker role all season. And he proved that he was solid out of hooker. He played a perfect game for a hooker. Like, no tries and all that, but just solid.
Yeah, just good service, eh? Samuel Atchison gave good service the whole series too, but I just think him coming off the bench was perfect for him. He just gave him a bit of extra gas against fatigued forwards. So.
Yeah, Namana, he deserved it. And yeah, just I'm still a bit salty, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, look, I was not happy on Wednesday night, that's for sure. You know, I think overall our completion rate was pretty strong too, 23 from 26. This was 23 from 25, so 3 errors apiece, 1 penalty conceded for them. Tackles, Queensland made about 10 more, so very, very similar. And missed tackles, Queensland missed a lot more than we did, and we made 30 line breaks. So it showed that we were making good ground, but we unfortunately just couldn't convert any of those opportunities into points. And I think that's off the back of the kicking game of Edwards and Lewis. There was virtually no kicking from anyone else on the field. Isaac Edwards had 402 and Jordan Lewis had 308. That's so hard to stop. And then you look at ours, it was a bit spread even. So I had 318, Ash Crutcher 237, and then, which are both good, realistically, that's kicking game that can win you a match usually. But then you look at, we had kicking from Jacob Morrison 74, Aaron O'Hare 40, Isaac Simons 24, Jordan Lewis 34. I think that maybe there just wasn't enough consistency with the kicks. Guys not as experienced taking kicks. I think maybe me and Ash should have owned that a little bit more, because Isaac Edwards, he owned that entire Origin series.
Yeah, I was about to say the key difference. Like, I looked at the sides when they first got announced, and I was just like, everything's pretty similar, except for the halves. They had way more experienced halves in the sense, like Lewis, even though he's only played 1.5 seasons, he's already a premiership winner and all that stuff. And then Edwards is just, I don't know, he's just so good. But the big key difference is the halves. Edwards, Lewis owned Origin all 3 games for the most part. Like, even game 2, we started slow. They got 2 early 40-20 scored off the back of both. One was from Lewis, and I believe the other one might have actually been Cherry Evans that kicked it.
Yeah, I think he kicked both. Or did Lewis kick?
No. Lewis kicked the first one.
Yeah,
he did that in like the 3rd minute, and I was like bittersweet. I'm like, oh, my Manly boy's done good, but then he's ruined us as well. But yeah, just I couldn't fault them, and like every time, like I just felt like we defended well, because we kept keeping them inside their 40 up until 4th tackle. But because we did that, it gave them the opportunity for the early kicks, and they nailed it almost every time.
Yeah, and that's just, they just owned us in the halves, unfortunately. And, I've got to take responsibility for that. But I wanted to talk about your teammate. I've got him in the notes, Jesse Bennett. So, he's one of the best forwards in the game right now, but he didn't quite, I guess, reach the heights we expected in the Origin series. He averaged 80 metres and 12 average tackles. His game 2 was pretty solid. I thought that was definitely his best game of the series, but his other 2 games left a bit to be desired. Do you think maybe it was just a little bit of too much of a step up for him too early, or what are your thoughts on that?
Me personally, being his captain, and I basically half decided where he's played at his whole career, because even last season and this season, me and Kane are like basically co-captains. We make the decisions as equals. His best position is left second row.
Yeah, right.
So coming into the Origin arena, yes, it's a step up, but he was also kind of playing out of position as well. I reckon if he was in that left second row, he would have performed a bit better. Probably not to the standards that he's been in regular season footy, because it's a whole different beast. But obviously you can't put him there because Kowal, look how he went. You can't argue that at all. If we won the series, he was player of the series, no doubt.
The only other guy that could have possibly pushed him for that would have been Chaz, but yeah, for me, he's definitely put him down as one New South Wales MVP. So obviously it's so early to really talk Origin changes, but do you think there's any changes that just have to happen next season if all stays relatively the same?
I would say you have to bring Kennedy in.
Yeah. I think it was a tough position to bring him in last game. We tried to bring him in off the bench, and unfortunately, I think we had 2 good centres that we had to put in Simons and Morrison. They both earned their spots. So the only real place we could fit him in was the bench, and he came on at halfback. And I remember saying after the fact that maybe we should have given Ash the full 80 minutes, and I think it just wasn't his position to come on, unfortunately. So I don't think it's his last game in Sky Blue, that's for sure.
Personally, if I was captaining and making those decisions, I would have either started him in centre just for his pace and all that stuff, because the centres do make breaks on occasion, and when they do, it's good. But if not, I would have had him come off the bench at like a winger per se. That way he does get those kick returns still just on the edge instead. Like replacing KCK at halftime, probably would have done them both good. Give KCK a spell, get his thoughts together, because he never really was able to properly get into games until the last game. He had like 2 really good runs, and that's really all we've seen of him all Origin series, sadly.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, but at the same time, I think, unfortunately, Queensland just played too good of a game plan. I'll cast your mind back to the New Zealand Origin match, and Bunsey came on, and he moved onto the wing, and I can't remember who came on for. It might have been Johnny Columbus, and he got virtually no ball because they just didn't kick it to him at all. So I think that might have been a way that Kennedy would have been nullified. So I don't think having a bench winger really works, but I do think next season or next series, if everything, unless something drastic happens, I would have him as a lock in the centres. Now we're gonna I've got 3 top performers for each side. I've only done 2 for New South Wales because they were just 2 standouts, and I've done 3 for Queensland. Honourable mention, of course, Joey Kelly, but I thought the spine for Queensland was awesome in Game 3 and also the series. I had Isaac Edwards, Liam Ryan, and Kyle Lewis. I know Liam missed Game 1, but I think we saw just how important Liam was to that side. Like he just had that the defence of Queensland a lot more settled, and they stood up in the big moments defensively. So I think that was a big change having Liam back in the side. And then, of course, I've already alluded to it, Rahul Kaval and Chaz Dingo as the top performers for New South Wales. Would you change any of that, mate, or would you have anyone else jumping in?
To throw as like our third player for the top Blues performers, I'd have to throw Jordan Williams in there.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
He played really well in a losing side.
I think it's just sorry to interrupt. I think it's just the performance effect of Williams is that he's had such great performances that when where he'll run for huge meters, make so many tackles, and he tries so hard. But then when he doesn't have these performances, when he sort of still has a solid performance, but not one of these great performances we expect of him, we call it a poor performance because we know just how high of a standard he obviously plays at. So that's my thoughts on that one as well. But I definitely agree with you. I thought he was one of New South Wales' best. And, we're going to go through our Aussie lineups in a minute. And I didn't name him in mine, but, realistically, he probably should be there because he's going to do everything he can to get a result. I think that's probably... we talked about player of the series. I've said it's Isaac Edwards. Would you change anything about that?
Can't disagree with that. Edwards was clearly the best.
Yeah, he just owned the game. Like his stocks have definitely risen. I think there'll be a lot of clubs inquiring about him now, and he deserves all the money that he can get from those clubs and a big contract. Now, I want to go through our Australian lineups before we head into the next segment. Of course, this is only if it was picked today, and I mainly based mine off of the Australian form. The State of Origin form, whereas yours is a bit more club-based. As well. So I guess mine's more of a merit side, but I've decided for my lineup, I went Chaz Dingo at fullback, Joey Kelly and Luca Moscow. The Queensland wingers are on the wings, and then Jacob Morrison and Isaac Simons. I think Jacob is the incumbent in the senses for the Kangaroos and played pretty strongly in his debut there and deserves to stay there. And Isaac Simons is really strong, especially in Game 2 and 3. I've gone Liam Ryan. He's been playing a lot of fullback, but I think his connection with Isaac Edwards is too valuable to miss out on. So I've got Liam Ryan playing 6 and Isaac Edwards in the 7. Luke Malchus, Matthew Harris in the front row. I've gone Atchison as the dummy half. I think that, he's an incumbent as well and probably deserves to be there. Rahul Kaval was just so good throughout his series in New South Wales. It's probably the best footy I've ever seen him play, and Jackson Allison, the captain, joins him in that second row. And I've got Bo Sadler at lock. He's on another planet at the moment and could play there or hooker. You could do a bit of a switch between him and Atchison at stages during the game as well, so real valuable utility player there. And on the bench, I've got Jake Tuss at 14 and Luke Short at 15 in the front rower rotation. And then I've gone Kyle Lewis as sort of halves, maybe can come on and play. Bit of a roaming ball player, and Justin Plays as outside back depth. What about you, man? What's your side?
So I have a pretty similar side. main differences, I swapped the sides that Moscow and Kelly play. I find Kelly's so strong on the right edge. Instead of Morrison, I would go a Brody Kennedy in the centres. He's just too good to leave out of the side.
Fair enough.
Halves, I did Liam Ryan Edwards as well, but I'd probably lean towards starting Lewis over Ryan. Just keep that Queensland halves because of how dominant they were. And then Liam Ryan, if need be, throw on in the halves, but he's also the outside back depth if we need it.
Yeah.
Most of the forwards, pretty similar. Key differences, I actually put Sadler at 9, with Jordan Williams coming in at 13, leaving Atchison out. I basically put Jordan Williams in there because he had a solid series in a losing side, like I said just before, and Sadler's just so good at 9, and that's from club experience being his captain as well. On the bench, same props, just different order as well. Luke Short, Jake Tuss, they were outstanding. On the bench, if I were to pick KCK in centre, I would throw Kennedy on the bench. If not, I would put Kennedy at 3 and Lachlan Martin coming in, leaving KCK out.
Yep.
And 17 would be the Liam Ryan or Carlos. Kind of undecided with that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Good side. I think the end of the season will really be telling for who is going to end up being an Australian representative. Righto, that is myself and Matty Harris's Origin review for the whole series and for Game 3. We are also just gave you our Australian lineups. Make sure you let us know what your thoughts are on our lineups and what changes you would make. Without further ado, let's head into the agenda. Yes, welcome to the agenda. We've got 5 stories that have been reported around the league. Let's get right into it. Now, the first one, Ash Crutcher, is reportedly being pursued by up to 4 clubs. Of course, he had a huge he made his State of Origin debut, and he was pretty solid. I think he showed a lot of potential to be a big game player moving forward. He's now reportedly a wanted man. How much do you reckon he's worth, Matthew, and do you see him leaving South, I suppose, is the big question.
For starters, I kind of don't see him leaving South. I feel like he's probably got a good rapport there with all the other players. He's playing outstanding footy at the moment in club, and he played good in Origin too. For his worth, pay him whatever he wants. He's playing really good footy, and as long as he keeps that up by the end of the season, give him what he wants.
Yeah, and I think he could realistically be. I think he is the right halves partner for Isaac Edwards, who is obviously really dominant. I think they just complement each other really well. So I don't see him leaving Souths either. I think he's committed to that club. Moving on to our next story, Patrick Corcoran. Reportedly, the Brisbane are very, very interested in him. He's been linked to a possible move in season 4. This is a huge, story or a huge development. I don't know. The Warriors can't afford to lose him, but you look at the Broncos and they've had some real struggles in the hooking role this season, and we'll get into it a bit more when we get into our Broncos preview for their game this week. But, what are your thoughts on this? Do you see Patrick Corcoran leaving as well to move to Brisbane, and how much is he worth as well, I suppose?
Well, he's been playing solid as well. Not as good as Crutcher, of course, but I feel like Broncos do need a new hooker. I don't think Diab's the long-term plan. I think he's just in there for now, just maybe trying to spark something. The only thing I'll say is if he goes in and let's say it pushes Jason Farah out, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Herban left us so he could link up with Farah, which is a close mate of his. What happens if he leaves? Does that send Herban out as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting development too. Jason was at the Warriors last season, correct me if I'm wrong, and he's played pretty good footy for the Warriors over the past couple of seasons, over that that time too. He moved to the Broncos as sort of one of their marquee signings. Has definitely hasn't reached his potential. I wonder if maybe this is more a story to try and get him going a bit. But I don't know. It's a very complex issue anyway. But I don't see Corcoran leaving the Warriors. I think he bleeds that jersey, and I think this might just be a bit of a story to stir up Jason and get him playing his best football.
Just a little Buzz Rockfield story there.
Yeah, I think maybe they gave Uncle Buzz or Uncle whoever does the SRL stories a little bit of a buzz. Anyway, Liam Ryan, he's reportedly going to take over as South Sydney captain from Jai Collins, who I assume will just move into a vice captaincy role. I can't see him ever leaving South. He bleeds blue and red, green and red. But what's your thoughts on this? Do you think Liam Ryan is the right man to be captain? What do you think could be the reason for Jai wanting to step down?
I think it might just be like an outside source. Maybe he just doesn't have the time for it, which I'm pretty sure is why Dingo stepped down as a captain as well, way back when. I feel like Ryan's perfect for it because he's so involved in the SRL. He's such a great player. He's respected, runs his own podcast as well. I feel like it's a good move for him.
Yeah, I think if Jai's still at the club, then it makes no real difference anyway. I think that Liam has a big role at South regardless. So I don't think too much will change if this doesn't.
I think the only difference is the pecking order, and it's only going to be a slight difference anyway. It's like 1 to 2, 2 to 1.
Yeah, that's it. Our next sort of story, Levi Raymond. He's been benched by the Broncos this week. He's the Kiwis captain, and I'm wondering if that is the right decision. Of course, Lachlan Martin's been really a big supporter of Levi. He's got 5 try assists so far this season, is averaging 184 kick meters, which is a pretty good knock as well. Is him and Jason Farah maybe being the scapegoat at the moment for the poor form of the Broncos, or what do you think of this? Is it genius or is it crazy?
I feel like it's crazy. I don't know how you scapegoat Levi for their performances when in their first 2 games, he was responsible for all 7 of their tries. He scored a double, actually scored the tries in the round 1 game against us. And then he set up all 5 tries in their round 2 win against Cowboys.
Yeah.
I can't scapegoat Levi. For me, he's a lock in that halves position. I don't know why they took him out.
No, it's a bizarre one. He didn't have his best game in the New Zealand Origin game either, but you know what? He was pretty strong in that game as well. Our next story, Luke Short. So, dramatic scenes at Parramatta. Of course, Luke Short has taken over from the captaincy. Eli Barnes has stepped down. You know, unfortunately, we've talked about the Broncos. There's a lot of noise coming out of Brisbane, but there's a lot of noise coming out of Parramatta too. What are your thoughts on Eli Barnes giving up the captaincy? Is it, the writing on the wall now that Eli Barnes is set to leave Parramatta?
Sadly for the Eels, I feel like it is. I heard it before, but I think he stepped down with so he could have the opportunity to swap maybe mid-season. But yeah, I'm not sure why he wants to leave because he's been so good for Parramatta in the past. Although on the flip side of things, the more positive things, Luke Short absolutely deserves it.
Yeah, Luke's been pretty desperate to become a captain for some time, so there's a lot of passion coming into that role, but I'm a bit concerned about... I think that Eli wanting to leave isn't necessarily a reflection on the Eels, but he's had to carry that team for quite some time. I think maybe he feels he could head to another club and sort of just not be the marquee guy. It's hard because he's obviously arguably the best player in the SRL, but he obviously couldn't fit in at Manly. Or let's pick... I'll go the Cowboys, right? Like, Tola Amatagi's playing great footy, but he goes there. He doesn't have to be the superstar because you've still got guys like Bunty Campbell, who's exploded. Luca Moscow's Queensland representative. Damien Moana in the 6. And Chris Lord's playing really good footy out of lock, so he can just sort of play his natural game and not have to worry about necessarily carrying the team as it was said he was doing at times for Parramatta last season. So That's my thoughts on that, at least.
I think I personally called him the Parramatta Elis instead of Eels. That's how much he was carrying them last season for the most part. Like, but he's such a good player that he can win you games on his own back.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, just to interrupt. I think that the best thing for Parramatta now, with Luke Short now in charge, is he's got to sign some good players to come in around Eli to convince him to stay. Because if not much changes, it's more likely that Eli's going to leave than stay, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Righto, that was Around the League. 5 stories coming out of the SRL. Let us know your thoughts of these in the comments. Without further ado, it is time to head into our Round 4 review. Yes, we are back with some SRL action this week. We've missed the regular season, but we've got some big games coming at you. I'm keen for these games. Our first game to reintroduce the season after a long mid-season break is the Warriors taking on the Raiders. This game will be a Warriors home game. Mass changes for the Raiders. I can obviously speak on these changes. Corey Bell was obviously suspended and will start from the bench because of that, meaning that this is how they line up. Jacob Morrison gets his first start in the fullback jersey. He's never played there before in the SRL, so exciting moment for him. Alex Chen moves to the wings to join Dom Toretto. Rahul Kaval moves from the second row to the centres, and he will captain the side. Mark Iron has moved from fullback to the other centre position. Partner Luke Thompson in the halves as usual. Jordan Lewis remains in the front row. He will be joined by rookie Ben Arnold. Samuel Atchison is the hooker. Luke Malchus moves from the front row to the second row. With Sabbath Ta'ua joining him in the jersey number 12. Terengahau Fe'u is of course the lock as usual. And coming off the bench, Wally Allen has been promoted from the 17 jersey to the 14 jersey, so he will likely be a part of the front row rotation, joining Jonty McGuinnesskin, who has really made a name for himself in that number 15 jersey. Corey Bell is obviously still sitting on the bench due to his suspension, and Sonny Taylor rounds out the 17. Now let's talk about the Warriors. Their lineup. Chance Bunce is again at fullback. Isaac Simons to Tara Maxwell are the wingers. Sean Walker, Nikau Awateri, I hope I said that right, are the centres. Joshua Corcoran is in the 6th. Joe McCartney, their mid-season signing, starts at halfback. John Nanai and Daniel Engo are the front rowers. Sage McGilley has moved into the 9 position. David Barner and Logan Strange are the back rowers as usual. Patrick Corcoran has moved from his usual 9 role into lock forward, an interesting change for captain Chance Barnes. Seamus Walker, Liam Rogers, Nihana Brafton Thompson, and TJ Ashford are the bench. Let's start off with the home side. Matty, what are your thoughts on the changes to their lineup, specifically Patrick Corcoran to lock?
I'm surprised about that one, although I feel like he's going to play well at lock anyways. But he was playing really well at 9. I guess maybe getting Magale, which I'm pretty sure he's inactive. Am I right?
Yeah, I think you are correct there.
Maybe due to him being inactive, put him in a more simplified role, so it doesn't matter too much, and then having the 2 active halves, because maybe they want to see, are we going to go with these guys in the future? Give them a chance because they are active.
Yeah, I think
it's not a bad side at all. I like Simons on the wing or Simons on the wing. And yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I do see the logic behind it, but I just wonder if at this point in the season, if it's a good time to be, I guess, making those changes. I'm just trying to get the team list back. There we go. So it's an interesting one. Like I sort of talked on the review, I can definitely see them making finals, but they need to have a win now. They've had a solid start to the season, and they've had a couple good moments, and they've lost in close games to good sides, but now they need to just try and scrap away with some 2 points, or they're going to miss the finals again this season. Let's talk about the Canberra Raiders now. So, obviously, you can have a bit more of a non-biased look at it than me, but what are your thoughts? So, we've obviously got some big changes. The big ones, Morrison at fullback, Rahul Kaval and Mark Iron are the new centre pairing for this week. And we've decided to give Luke Malchus a run at second row. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm all for Malchus playing second row. That's good. Personally, I probably would have put Mark Iron at fullback because he's tried and proven in the position. I get why Morrison's going to be there. Give him a chance there. See how he goes. See if he's the future and all. Kowal is in the centre. I know why. It was a forced change because of the Bell situation. I don't know if that is going to, what am I trying to say, affect you too harshly because my team list, I have a second rower in centre as well. I feel like it's going to strengthen up the edge. Maybe stop a couple of the runaway tries if there are any. But yeah, me personally, I don't know what yous have done. I'd probably put Bell on for Kowal at half time just so Kowal comes back in the forwards at half time. But yeah, other than that, very solid side. I like the looks of Jordan Lewis and Ben Arnold. Like I've seen the one or two games he has played Ben Arnold, and he looks good to me.
Yeah, Jordan Lewis is shaping up as to be a leader of the club if he commits long term. Just on Jacob Morrison, I think that we obviously had to make some changes to the back line, so we sort of thought this is just the week where we just experiment a little bit. We're sitting in fourth, so we kind of have an opportunity to do that. So we just thought we'd give him a little run in that jersey. I'm just going to get the ladder up at the moment. So at the moment, the Raiders are sitting on 4 points. If the Warriors win, they've got better for and against, so they will jump ahead of them on the ladder. Whereas the Eels and the Broncos, unless they have big wins, they aren't going to overtake us. So there isn't too much risk. Obviously, that top 4 position is important, but I think if something happens to a Mark Iron or me or Luke Thompson or something like that, just having those options. If we've got to move Mark into the halves, we've got a good option at fullback for whatever reason. I think that was sort of just our thinking behind that. Now, I'm going to give my biased prediction, and I've gone Warriors 1-12 because I don't want to look biased, so I'm going to say it was biased. Warriors 1-12, I think that they'll finally get their win. I've gone Chance Bunce, most valuable player. What about you?
Me, I've actually gone the other way. I've went Raiders 1-12, with Luke Thompson as the man of the match. I feel like you and Luke Thompson back together, you're going to put Origin behind you. You're both going to play well. And I feel like Luke Thompson, before Origin, used to touted as the best halves combination alongside Crutcher and Edwards. I feel like Luke Thompson might take it upon himself and kind of show who's boss again. Because he's been one of the best basically all of last season and coming into this season as well. I feel like it's going to be a good performance from your halves and maybe the whole team as well.
Yeah, here's hoping anyway. Alright, let's get into the Broncos and the Panthers game. Next up, we'll start off with the Brisbane Broncos. Sam Herban is the fullback. Tyler West and Michael Crimp are on the wings. Tomo Mack and Justin Place are partners in the centres. Jack Cahill is playing in the halves alongside Cherry Evans. I think that is a change from previous weeks. Logan Clark and Jordan Ford start in the front row. Coda Diab has been moved into hooker. He was, of course, forced in there a couple weeks ago. I think for the Cowboys game, actually, after Jason Farah served a suspension. But he will be looking for a big game to try and lock up that 9 role. Pete Veretto and Lennox Prakash are in the second row again. Jack Spillane at lock. Jason Farah, Stephen Sheldon, Levi Raymond, and Dan Mason take up the bench. And for the Panthers, they've named a little bit of a different lineup. Brodie Kennedy at fullback, Nathan Fisher, Robbie Elms on the wings, Josh Saddle-Cart partners Hayden Melhurt in the centres. James Thorne is back in the halves. He's moved from the hooking position to partner Mark Lee there. Lachlan Sinclair and Jordan Williams are in the front row with Declan Murphy at hooker. Lachlan Marden is the captain. He is in the second row along with Sean Bradford. Simon Hunt is the lock with Ollie Pace, Hayden Davis, Anthony Delaney and Tim Ball on the bench. Let's start off with the Broncos. What are your thoughts on their lineup? Of course, we've talked a little bit about the Levi Raymond dropping, but I more want to go into depth about Diab playing 9. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think he offers in that position that maybe Jason hasn't at the moment?
I think maybe. Honestly, I feel like Farah shouldn't have been dropped at 9. He is their best 9. Maybe they just want to give Diab a go. I feel like he'll be decent. Like, he's played lock already, so he knows how to pass a footy. The one thing I take out of that is actually taking Verretto out of lock. Not with the Diab thing, just that's the more surprising thing to me. Verretto's been so good at lock, I wouldn't have changed that.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. He's had some really inspiring moments. Like, he makes some huge runs out of the lock. He really lifts the team every time he plays, and he's a real consistent defender as well. Just on Penrith now, we'll go over to their team list. I think the main change is James Thorne. He played hooker against the Cowboys. He's now moved into the halves to partner Mark Lee. I think the halves probably is James Thorne's best position, and I'm excited to see Declan Murphy play in the hooking role. Jordan Williams in the front row is what I want to ask you about, though. What are your thoughts on maybe limiting his minutes a little bit more?
I feel like that's more on the case that they want to avoid him getting injured. Because he has had a poor run of luck with injuries, all of it coming from the lock position. I'm thinking maybe he plays that 20 minutes at prop first half, second half, swap him into lock, so he's only playing 60 and he still gets that full second half at lock. That's what I would do personally. Or the other way around, have him start at lock and then move into the front row. Other than that, side looks pretty good. I like Hayden Miller in the centres. I think he played there in round 3, and I liked it, and that's one of the reasons why I actually moved one of my players into the centres. But yeah, it looks like a solid side. I feel like Penrith might take it.
Yeah, so I think this is a desperation game for both teams. Like, I don't think Penrith, they haven't won a game yet this year, but they haven't been dire. Like, all their performances, they stuck it to Manly for a good portion of that game, but Manly were always realistically in control. And then the Warriors, they let themselves down with errors. And then the other game, they tested the Cowboys, who I've got as Premiership dark horses. So I think they're the team that I think are most likely to win this game. I've actually got them winning 1-12. Mark Lee winning man of the match. I think that we might start to see the cracks show at Brisbane a little bit more. I think it'll be a really interesting game for the context of the season and who's still in contention for the top 4. What about yourself? What's your prediction?
So I've got Panthers 1-12 as well, with Kennedy being man of the match. Over the season, I feel like Penrith are getting better. They started off really poorly against Warriors. Then they stuck it to us for 50 minutes of the match, and then what's the saying? Like, the cream rises to the top. We finally took over and put it to bed. But then in round 3, they lost to a last-minute try.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
Like, I was heartbroken for Panthers in that game. I don't support either side, and I have a soft spot for Cowboys as well, considering a Manly boy's now the captain there, or former Manly boy. But yeah, I was heartbroken for Panthers. Like,
yeah.
I would hate to lose like that. Well, we did in Origin. Not exactly last minute, but still heartbreaking.
Yeah, I think that they've got to get a win eventually. I think this is probably their most winnable game of the season so far. Righto, let's get a bit more bias. We obviously had bias with the Raiders game. Let's get some real bias in this now. Parramatta taking on Manly. This is going to be, I reckon this is going to be a really interesting game as well. Joey Kelly moves into the fullback jersey. Xavier Demando and Ethan Durant are on the wings. Eli Barnes, of course, moving to the centres, and Taj Seibold joining him there. Jaden White, Charlie Butler are your halves as usual. Matt Downey, Samuel Lillard, the front row. Tim James will play hooker as per usual. Attila Centendag, Abraham Walker in the second row. Luke Short is the new captain. He is playing jumper number 13 with Mark Hunt, Jacob Reynolds, Damien Shelford, and Stephen Cross coming off the bench. Now your boys, the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles, we've got Chaz Dingo at fullback. He's backing up from his stellar Origin campaign. Kane Chapman-Kenny and Tyrone Clay are on the wing. Joshua Blackburn moves from the second row into the centres. and Maverick Oldfield will play in the centres as well. Joshua Butterfield, Kyle Lewis are your halves. Brad Goodwin and Daniel Punch in the front row. Bo Sadler is the hooker. Jesse Bennett and Jackson Allison are the back rowers, and you are at 13. Matthew Harris and captain. And off the bench, we've got Creed, Alexander Chapman, Ben Punch, Malachi Booth, and Will Kay. Let's start off with your guys. Let's start off with Manly. I'm going to assume, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong, Joshua Blackburn moving into the centres, is that a let's shut down Eli Barnes, not knowing that Eli Barnes wasn't going to play fullback type of thing? Or what was your thoughts around that decision?
So defense was definitely the tactic. There was actually more than just that. One of the reasons we did have a rookie in at centre, I just wanted to simplify his role a little bit. He's a big boy playing out on the edge. Give him less minutes, might be better for him. But the main reason with Blackburn, and I'm an open book, so I'll say this, I put him there on the left centre to actually mark Kelly to shut him down a little bit at the back, because Blackburn's a much better defender than most centres.
Yeah.
And then I've seen the team list and Kelly wasn't there. I'm like, yikes. My tactical decision didn't exactly work out.
No.
I'm still happy with him being there. There's still a winger that he's going to have to stop.
Yeah, fair enough. Parramatta, let's go. There's really only one thing that I think people are interested on hearing about, and what I'm really interested on talking about. Kelly, fullback, Barnes, centre. What is your thoughts on that switch?
Kelly to fullback is a good decision. He's one of the most evasive players in the game, and getting his hands on the ball more often is going to be deadly. And as the Manly captain, super worried. I'm confident in my team, but I reckon we'll stop him, but not without some damage. He's probably going to score one, and I don't want to say that as the Manly captain, but I have to be realistic as well. Barnes to the centre, though, I would have put him in the halves.
Yeah,
I would have put him at 6. Like me, I put Dingo in at 6 in the trial match, and he played so good. Like to the point, I was really tempted on playing him at 6 again and leaving Casey Kerr at the back. Other than that, the side looks pretty solid. Other than their hooker, I don't know, they might have to trade him.
We love Tim James.
Other than that, pretty good. Luke Short at lock's a good decision again. He's been solid there all year. And now he's a captain as well. I reckon he's just going to take even more steps above. I reckon within the next season or two, he'll be the best forward in the game. Again, because my opinion, he was the best in season 1 out of the forwards.
Yeah. So I've got in my notes here, Manly running a steady ship, improving each week, ready to peak. So I didn't realise I was a rapper until I read that. But, I think that reflects your season last season too, but to a lesser degree of the success. So early last season, no offense, you weren't great. You were pretty poor at times. And then you peaked at the end of the season. And you definitely didn't have the quality that you do this year to some extent too, which is weird to say about a premiership winning side. But at the time, that team was still gelling and still improving. Now, you look like you're not getting out of second gear at the moment in some games, like the Penrith game and also the Broncos game. Like, you just look like and even Souths actually too, like you give it to them for as long as it takes, and then eventually you just decide, okay, we'll turn it on now, and you come away with a 13-plus victory. Like, do you think that now's the time to start improving, or do you think, or to start, really flexing your credentials, or when do you think you want to see some big improvement from the side?
Personally, having high standards for my club, I want us to be playing our best footy every week. The fact we're only in second gear still getting wins is pleasing, but it's also a little bit annoying that we're not giving our best footy. I want to see a good performance this week. What I want to flog the Eels. Absolutely want to flog it. I want to flog every team we play. I want to prove that we're the best, we're the reigning premiers. That's my high standard. But in reality, a win's a win. I just want to keep getting wins. We're on that streak. We're on a 7-match win streak, including the trial. It's 8. If you ignore the trial, one stat I actually I looked up myself, since round 7 last season, we actually haven't been behind in a game.
Wow.
We've actually been leading in every single game, including the finals and all of the season. That's a lovely stat I like to see, but I also kind of want to see what we are like when the times get tough. Like, can we pull ourselves out of the dirt if we are playing a really bad game, kind of thing.
Yeah.
At the same time, I also don't want that to happen, because what if we don't? With our whole bad start to last season, I'll put it down to so many new faces, a lot of rookies. We started gelling. I feel like after the incident last season, where we had to punish a player, put him on the bench, all that stuff, I won't go too much into it. I feel like the team just kind of bonded after that and just banded together, and we just got it through that last bit of the season. I think we scraped into the finals on for and against. I think you guys got us in because you beat Panthers by enough.
Yeah. So
I
we're
was
basically
thankful for
premiers.
that.
We're basically premiers.
I'll make an 18th premiership ring for you guys, okay? No, but yeah, then we went into the finals as massive underdogs. I think I was on the it was previously known 180 podcast last season before the Eels game in the finals, and I just said, mark up Barnes, keep him quiet, and we did as much as we could. I think he's still got to try in a lot of meters, but for the most part, any small break he made, it was just that we made it a small break. And then the history was that grand final. Favorite game to watch. I've watched it like 4 times, not gonna lie. It brings a tear to my eye every time I see that try I scored, or I tripped over and scored anyway.
Mate, it helps when you win by 20. But
It does.
So just on you wanting to smash Para, I've actually got you guys winning 13 plus. I don't think it'll be a huge margin. I think Joey Kelly's going to keep them in it to some extent too, and I've got Dingo winning man of the match. What's your prediction?
So I want us 13 plus. I want Dingo scoring a hat trick. Everyone scoring. That's what I want. Realistically, I feel like we'll win 1 to 12, and I feel like Butterfield is going to have a standout performance. He will be our man of the match.
Fair enough. Now the last game of the season. This is a frothing game. I've been really talking this one out. The Cowboys play the Rabbitohs. It's time to prove for these teams, are they contenders or pretenders? Let's start off with the Cowboys lineup. We've got Tyler Amatagi back at fullback. He's recovered from his concussion he suffered about a month ago. Moscow, Kembolo, wingers, Cooper Gronk and Johnny Columbus are in the centres. Moana and Caval in the halves. Callum Irwin and Robbo Mobston start in the front row. Robbo's, of course, got some Origin experience under his belt now. Thomas Wallace is the dummy half again. Jamal Kausakau and Kobe Johnston are the back row, and that's a really strong second row. Chris Lord, the captain at lock. He's arguably been the best lock in the game so far this season. And off the bench, Stace DePace, Casey Namana, Kieran Wells, and Zach Smith. Let's go to the Rabbitohs now. Liam Ryan is the fullback. Jai Collins and Thomas Mendonca will line up on the wings. Jackson Cutler, Jason Lemieux, hope I said that one right, are in the centres. Isaac Edwards and Ash Crutcher are the halves. Rex Slattery, Mason Remy in the front row. Aaron O'Hare at hooker. Drake Dranigan, Logan Guys in the second row. Jake Tuss is the lock with Cameron Reynolds, Tallis Riff, Dawson Swarm and O'Shea Olay coming off the bench. Let's start off with the Cowboys. What are your thoughts on their lineup and their season so far?
Their season, it's hard to make of it. That was so good round 1. Which I remember straight after that game, I gave my praises to Lord, congratulated him, everything like that. Then round 2, a bit surprising. I honestly was surprised Broncos took that. But then again, Queensland Derby, Broncos are always going to get up for that. Round 3 looked shaky, but they got the job done, which is what you want. You want to be able to win when you're not playing your best.
That's what the good teams do, hey?
Exactly. I feel like this game, I reckon they're going to prove that they're not just dark horses. I reckon they're going to prove they're contenders. That they're going to they're going to give a good crack at South.
Yeah, well, I've got
And
them
with
as my dark horses at the moment. Sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
with their team list, it's solid. I can't disagree with any of the choices. Maybe the only one is probably swapping the second rows around. Personally, I prefer Johnston at the left side because he's been so good there all of his career.
Fair enough, but that's a minor change as well in the grand scheme of things. And then you look at the Rabbitohs, it's the same thing. They're basically just copy and pasting their team list because it's just working. South are just about third in everything. They're third on the ladder. I think they're third defensively and third in attack. So they're essentially a little bit behind the Cowboys and, of course, the you guys, the Manly Seagulls. But this is their chance. There's been a lot of talk about Manly for obvious reasons, and then the Cowboys. Because the Cowboys are the surprise package, and you guys are just the grizzled premiership winners. You're the veterans in some sense. Whereas I think this is the Rabbitohs' chance to say, well, we made the grand final last year. Like, we're still a thing too, and I think if they win this game, their premiership odds will go through the roof. They will be a lot more likely. I think people will really start talking about them as favourites yet again. I think I agree with some of the stuff you said about the Cowboys too. Obviously they sort of slipped at the back end of the first half of the season, but now they've had that break. I think this is a good time for them to readjust and, get back into the swing of things and refresh for the rest of the season. What are your thoughts on South, just to go back to them as well? Like, they've had a pretty solid lineup. Do you think they're contenders or do you think they're pretenders?
As a proud Roosters supporter, I'm going to say pretenders. No, honestly, in reality, they got a solid side. They do actually kind of remind me a little bit of real life Souths. Like, they lost some good players. They lost Dingo and all that stuff. They were in the previous grand final, of which they lost. And people think maybe they're not going to be as good this season. I feel like they're humming along nicely. Their only loss is a 10-point loss to the premiers. Looking at their side, I can't see anything wrong with it at all.
Yeah, I think they're just solid, and they'll keep improving as the season goes on. Similar to you guys, I've got them winning 1-12. I think that they might just show off a little bit to the Cowboys and sort of show them what it takes to be at the best and versing the best. And I've got Liam Ryan coming back from his Origin heroics to be the man of the match. What's your prediction?
So I touched on it a little bit before. I feel like Cowboys are going to give it to them. It's still going to be a close game. Cowboys 1-12. I feel like Chrissy Lord's going to have a captain's knock. He's going to lead them from the front. Honestly, I reckon he's going to get a try and a try assist. That's just an extra prediction for me. It's going to be an awesome game. The fullbacks, I reckon, are both going to be strong. Brian and Almatani. I cannot wait for this match. Other than my own game, it's the one I'm most looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good game. That is our round 4 preview, and I'm going to head straight into the Q&A now. I'm going to answer you guys' questions that you sent in. This is where we're going to say goodbye to Matty Harris. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on the show. Hopefully we can get you back on soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Yeah, so we've just got through all of the previews and reviews with Matty Harris. Thanks to Matty for coming on. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that segment. Sorry if I have been a bit quiet in this podcast. I am still recovering from the flu, but I asked you guys in the Discord if you could send me through some questions, and I got a lot of responses from you guys, so thank you so much for that. Let's get right into it. I'm going to try to not spend too much time on them. We've got 23 questions to get through, so hopefully we can get through all of them. First question, what kind of players do the Panthers need? I said this the other week. I'm trying to cast my mind back to who I said they should get. I think I recommended Liam Ryan as a half. I think just a good half. I think get a bit of halves, stability in the halves there. I think they've got a pretty solid pack overall. Maybe just a big-time front rower like a Luke Malchus. He's on the market at the moment. He could be a guy to come in the forwards for them. But they have a pretty solid team. I think they've just got unlucky with a couple of results. I think that they're playing a lot better than 8th position, which is what they're in at the moment. Thoughts on Ash Crutcher? Next question. Really solid player, really starting to come into his own. He made his New South Wales debut next to me. He played all 3 games of that series. Of course, we did lose, but his stocks have definitely gone up. He's shown that he can be one of the better players in the league. How do you think the ladder will stand after the last round is played? That is a really good question. Realistically, anyone can still make finals, but I don't think that if Penrith lose to Brisbane this week, they're done. And realistically, if Brisbane lose to Penrith this week, I think they might be done too. I think Parramatta, Brisbane, and the Warriors need to win all their games to make it. It's tough to say that I can't see Penrith making it at the moment. I think the Warriors are a team that can make a final push towards the top 4 this week against Canberra. Is a huge game for both of those sides. I think the top 3 is going to stay relatively. It's going to be those 3. It's going to be the Rabbitohs, Cowboys, and Sea Eagles locking down those spots. But I think will the order change? I don't think so either. I think the Cowboys will finish in 2nd, and the Rabbitohs will finish in 3rd. That 4th spot, it's sort of a toss-up between Canberra, the Warriors, and I can maybe see Para scraping in there, but for me right now it's between the Raiders and the Warriors, and then the battle for the spoon. We might see it decided this weekend with Penrith and Brisbane, unfortunately, but it's a weird old game, rugby league. Anything can happen, so don't read too much into that. Will Manly go back-to-back? I've got them winning the Premiership again this season. I think that they're building nicely, and it's going to be really tough to stop them. They've got one of the best teams in the league. They've got really good balance all across their roster. It's just a really well-organised team. When can I come on one day, and what are your top 10 players right now? I don't know who you are. This is anonymous, but my top 10 players right now, just off the top of my head, I'm going to miss a lot, so don't read too much into this, guys. But in no particular order either. Isaac Edwards, Chaz Dingo, Matty Harris, Luke Thompson, Lockie Martin, Eli Barnes. I'm having a blank. Chance Bunce, Logan Strange, Tyler Amatagi, Kyle Lewis maybe? I don't know, that's just right off the top of my head. I might do a segment like that next week if you guys want to see that. It'll be an interesting topic, that's for sure. Next one, how likely is Pete Ferretto to the Raiders at this point? We haven't had any discussions with Pete, I can tell you that now. It's, since that news broke, I think 2 weeks ago, that Eels were keen, and I confirmed that the Raiders were keen. We haven't had any discussions with Pete, but we are really keen to have him at the club if he would like to jump across. But he's doing good things for Brisbane, and Brisbane, he's been a great servant for Brisbane, so hopefully, for Brisbane's sake, hopefully he stays loyal as well. Next up, which Origin stars disappointed you the most with their performances? I want to say Jesse Bennett was disappointing, but I do think he wasn't at his highest standards, but I think that's the jump up to Origin. I think he'll be better for the experience. Kane Chapman-Kenny was another guy that got bagged a lot. He definitely wasn't at his best, but again, I don't think anyone was really bad. I thought everybody had some really good moments and some really solid games, and it was just a really tight series. There's not much else I can say about that, really. I think everybody deserves to keep their jerseys. There's no one that I'd realistically drop. There's a lot of players that I'd love to see brought in, but there's not a lot of players that I would drop. Next up, we've got NRL comparisons. I'm not sure what this is referring to, but if you want me to compare an SRL player to an NRL player, I think Eli Barnes and Tom Trbojevic have a lot of similarities, especially their seasons last season. To some extent, some people could argue that those fullbacks carried their teams, but I don't know, there's a couple of other ones, Jacob Morrison. He's got a bit of Jocelyn Hodges footwork about him, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I might do that for a podcast as well. If you guys want to see that, let me know. That'd be a really sick one, actually. Do your top 10 best non-Australian players. I barely did my top 10 best Australian players, but I might do some content like this in the Discord in the future. I think that's a pretty good idea. After game 1 of Origin being so half dominant, maybe Dingo should have moved into the halves with Jack as his partner in crime. Ooh, I do like that idea. Maybe we should have looked at that. Kennedy could have come in at fullback. That isn't a bad idea. Maybe in the future we might try that out, but I think Dingo was great at fullback, and Ash Crutcher was incredible in the half still. I think he still really tried his best and had a lot of good moments. So I don't think that it's really fair to say that Ash should have been dropped in that game. Personally, now this one's going to be an interesting one. Raiders recruited bad in season 3. What's the point of having Bell and Taylor on the bench? No need for 2 backs on the bench. Need more big boys. Righto. We usually only carry Sonny Taylor on the bench. Corey Bell usually starts. He's been suspended. So we've moved Rahul Kaval into the centres, and Luke Malkus has moved into the second row. Usually it's Taylor, 16, Wally Allen, who's a second rower, in 17, and then Ben Arnold and Jonty McGuinness on the bench as our front row rotation. And that's been working really well. Unfortunately, we had to make some changes with Bell moving back there. And because Sonny Taylor is inactive, we decided there's not much point in rewarding him with a starting position. We thought we'd reward players who had been great servants of the club. That's just my opinion anyway. That's just how I think we should have gone about it. I think we made the right decision there. As for our recruitment, a lot of things went really wrong. Sonny Taylor became inactive. He was going to play wing. Positional rules came in that changed. He was inactive, so he couldn't change his primary to wing. So now we're stuck with a gold 5/8 with winger stats on our bench, which is really frustrating. So then we signed Corey Bell, and he was going to be our other starting winger. He's obviously got himself in a bit of trouble now, but that was sort of why we signed Bell just before the break ended. So because he still didn't have a club, he was a free agent during that time. Isaac Simons was another free agent. He went to the Warriors. And we signed Luke Malkus, who is a big boy as well. So I think our recruitment was pretty strong this season. We've lost a lot of forwards, but we replaced it with some really quality forwards. Luke Malkus is an absolute gun. So hopefully that answers your question. I hope I didn't sound too offended by that, because I'm not. I'm just trying to defend my team, that's all. Next question. Who do you think can stop Manly's winning streak? I don't know if anyone can. No, I think someone will surprise Manly eventually this season. It's hard to stay up for that long. Cowboys is a good bet. I might just head into the matches. They've got Parramatta. Wouldn't surprise me if Parramatta get up. Joey Kelly back at fullback. Might spark them a little bit. Then they've got Canberra. I hope we can surprise them, but a bit unlikely. Then they've got North Queensland. Probably North Queensland. They've got the Warriors after that. I don't really see the Warriors beating them. I think North Queensland's probably the best bet. Who is my favourite Raider at the SRL? I would say my favourite Raider, Rahul Kaval's an obvious one. We work really closely. Love that dude. He's a good guy. And probably a guy that I really get on well with is Jacob Morrison. I have a really good relationship with him. How did the Eels turn their season around? I like that Kelly is in the fullback jersey, but I think Barnes needs to be in the halves. I think Kelly being at fullback will take some pressure off Barnes to play his game. So I think that just taking pressure off Eli Barnes, so other players need to step up for them to turn their form around. Best player in the SRL at the moment? Probably, I said Chaz. Well, Chaz is the first guy that pops in my head, but I actually had Bo Sadler above him as Manly's best this season. But I'll say Chaz Dingo. Rumours going around Eels want to trade Tim James for Kamish for Logan Strange from the New Zealand Warriors. That'd be a good trade. Parramatta. I'm not sure what other hooking options Parramatta really have though. And Logan Strange, but he's a good forward, and they probably do need some help in the forwards, especially in the back row. I think they are a bit light on back rollers, so that'd be a good pickup for them if they could get Logan Strange. But I don't think letting go of Tim James is the answer. I still think he's one of the better hookers in the SRL, in my opinion. Do you think Tim James is overrated like the rest of us? If that's not from a Manly player, I will be very, very surprised. Tim's a great player. What would your Australian side look like if it was your choice? I mentioned that earlier in the show, but, I don't make those decisions. I'm not in that leadership group. What went wrong for New South Wales? I think we were outplayed in the halves, and that's really disappointing for me as the 5/8 and chief playmaker. If you could make one change to the SRL, what would change? I was talking to Commission about this tonight. I wish we had custom teams. We just finished the Mines teams. Make sure you check that out. The 4 new teams, and we were coming up with new ideas using the custom logos on the fan hub, and I wish we did that to begin with. I reckon that'd be cool and a bit more original, and sort of get rid of. I like having personal connections to the club, and I have to clubs, and I have a personal connection to Canberra, obviously. But I just think it'd be a unique spin on professional rugby league. Next up, do you think there is a bias in our competition for the popularity and rep selection for players who are flashy or score points over those who are just rock solid players for their clubs and do the nasty work? Yeah, probably. I think some players are definitely held to higher standards than others. There's a lot of quiet players in the SRL who don't probably get the raps they deserve because they're not as active in the SRL community chat. So, players like Jai Collins, who is a great player, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's overrated or anything. He's just the first player that pops in my head as a guy who's really active in the chat. So he sort of pops to people's minds a little bit more when we're talking about, this guy's a great player, this guy's one of the better players. So that's just my opinion. Next question. Have you heard the rumours of Kane Chapman-Kenny might be on the move as well as Harris? I reckon that is BS. I think those guys bleed Manly. I don't see them ever leaving unless a Rooster side comes in. Maybe Matty Harris would go and take that over. But I think that they're pretty committed to Manly. I just had Matty on. I think he would laugh at that as well. Do you think all the Australian Test players will retain their jerseys? Maybe do it 117 in your opinion. I did do that. And not many players did. I think there will be a lot of loyalty given, though, by the skipper, Jackson Allison. I sort of more chopped and changed, kind of more did an origin merit side, I think, than a proper 1-17. And last question, thoughts on Cowboys possibly being a grand final team? Absolutely. I think that them and the Manly Seagulls will make the finals in season number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the Q&A. This has been the Be The Player podcast. If you want to support us, go down in the comment section, tell us what we can do to improve, tell us who we should get on the show next, and most importantly, hit the like button and enjoy the best of the footy. It's going to have SRL back this weekend. I will see you later next week. Peace out. Goodbye.